Welcome back to Foundations of Programming Day 6. Last week we finished the week working with JavaScript. As we were closing out class, I did assign you guys some homework. Some of you guys were able to complete it. Other people couldn't due to responsibilities. That's okay. But we're gonna start today with a couple of examples for those of you who were able to complete the assignment over the weekend. And then we could just do some comparing of code and talk through some problems that you guys might have, experienced throughout the weekend. I believe Kevin is going to be our first volunteer, and then possibly Daniel Chasmore afterwards. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Okay, so you can hear me. Can you see everything on my screen?
We can hear you, but your screen looks like it got hit by something. A
Okay, let
bunch
me
of
try.
like lines. Yeah.
Yeah, let me try one more time.
It's what was happening last week. Remember? I think you were
Yeah,
trying to
and
share.
I completely fixed it last time, but I guess it still doesn't like this room for whatever reason. Let me try one more time. Hold on. So I'm gonna go ahead. Go hit share. Hmm. Oh, I know why it's doing it. I know why it's doing it. I have to log in on my account. You mind if someone goes first before me and then I come back, or
Sure.
it shouldn't take no more than like 5 minutes for me to come back.
Let's take Daniel first, and
Okay.
then we'll see you, Williams. Daniel, let's see what you got, brother.
All right, sounds good. Let me pull it up. All righty. Share screen. Desktop. Share. All right. So one thing that I did struggle with is this right side right here,
Uh-huh.
because it originally was on the bottom, and then that's why I had to write in like I know you're not supposed to like hard code your styling and stuff like that, but I kind of hard coded the main content block just that way I could get this next to it because I was trying to put it all together to make it like look like a normal calculator. But this was as close as I could get with the styling. I'm still working on my CSS, but
Okay.
basically with this, I went through and just had an event list for every button, and then for the functionality, like the functions, I just went through and did the old school, created all my own functions. I know that there's like after like doing some research on this, there was a way to just be like calculate. I didn't realize that there was just a calculation function that just does
Don't
everything for you.
don't do that. I'm glad you didn't.
Um, yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna write out make all my own functions, you know.
Right, and that's good. I didn't mean to interrupt you there. There are going to be some libraries and stuff that you will have access to. Starting off, especially when you're starting up a new concept, like for those of you who are brand new to working with JavaScript, HTML, it's good practice to be able to hard code this, right? Understanding what your code is doing goes a long way. Once you understand how it's working, you're able to understand some of these libraries or built-in functions a little bit better. Understand that it's not just magic that's doing this. So I'm glad you did not use the calculate. I believe it's a module, like the calculate modules. So that's good. Continue.
So the things that I ran into that I had to like do some extra Googling on was these IDs. I kind of missed the part where, when you're doing pulling stuff using the hashtag, it has to be based on an ID. And that took a little bit longer than I would have liked because originally I had everything as class, like class equals one, class equals two, class equals three, because I was kind of like looking at the previous time that we had wrote JavaScript and HTML together. Um, and then I like saw that on the bad calculator, you used unorganized lists. I just went through it and used division. Like that's what I was comfortable with. I'm not sure if there's a huge difference other than maybe some like backside of like I also like read a couple Reddit posts on that where they were talking about for visually impaired people, the unorganized list can offer a little bit better functionality for that and offering a verbal version of it versus just what we would see.
Right. Yeah. No preference. Actually, preference. Yes, I prefer this. You could probably still reach the same outcome, but this I feel like looks a little bit cleaner personally.
Yeah, like I was looking at the unorganized list and I was like, it just doesn't flow nicely for me. I was like, I kind of like seeing where I open and close stuff, like
Agreed.
straight down and see what open and closes. But another thing that I had to work with as well was basically concatenating. So like originally when I had it, like if I clicked one and then I clicked two, it would either the two would overwrite the one, and then after I tried fixing it the first time, then it would just add them together in three. So then I had to convert the numbers to a string, concatenate them, and then convert them back to a number.
Correct.
The
Yep.
buttons to like actually work in the proper order, which took a little you know time to figure that one out as well. But see, you guys want any math problems?
Yeah,
Public.
quick demo. Quick demo. Let's see one of each if you can.
Yep. So we'll do 10 times 2, and then 5. Well, we already did that one. So we'll do 8 divided by 4. And then for this as well, because for my division function, um, I know that you could easily like do a percent and do a remainder, but like I just left mine as this that would wind up giving you a decimal.
Right. Yeah, it's called the modulus. Uh, the percent sign it stands for modulus. So like you, if you did like 8 modulus 2, it does return to you the remainder of the division. But yes, you are correct. Either one is fine.
And then for when I was doing a lot of my testing and stuff like that, my first thing that I always put in there, like you said, is make sure that it'll actually link up properly. So I had that in there. Um, and then like for a while I couldn't get my buttons to work, so I just kept messing around. So I underneath one I put where as soon as I click one over here, it would also do a console.log and print, number one was pressed. And
Right.
that I worked back and forth until I could get one of the buttons linked, and then I just basically copied that method for the rest of the buttons.
Right. Good stuff. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, man. And it looks like it's all working. Can we see the concatenations? You mentioned you had
Yeah,
a typecast.
yeah. So for appending the numbers, it's down here. The append number function is the same thing as the concatenation, but like if I was to write the function for it, like let me see. So if I don't know why it's being wonky now, but the function for it would be like converting it from it'd be item. Why is it not? Why is this tab function not working properly? Item.
It needs a function name. That's why it's giving you
Yeah.
like an error. Just give it something random.
All right. And then, but so for this, you could just do input and then change the type, make it equal to a string with a capital S. And that'll change it to a string. And then from there, you can then do the input plus equals itself for if you want to add another input to it.
Mhm.
And then when you're going to, from here, then you'd have to turn it back into a integer. So
Right.
the integer functions on this, there's a bunch of different ones. If you want to do integer, the number is telling you how many bits you have
Mhm.
before it will overflow. So if you're on a modern computer, just run 32-bit because it'll give you the most decimal points, I guess you'd say, before it runs out of information. And then from there, it's converted back to a number, and you can just feed that number back. So you'd return then your input. And this is what I had originally.
Right.
And then I found out that I can just use append and make it, the append function itself with the update screen. And then it was just faster with trying to go through all of these functions.
Mhm.
This was just an easier way of doing it.
Okay.
That's what I had for my initial one button. And then I like started doing research trying to figure out what's a more efficient way of doing this. So that way I don't have to worry about writing this multiple times.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. That was a pretty good example. Thank you. Really good. And I'm glad you worked on the functionality. I know it's not the sexiest looking calculator right here in your CSS, but the functionality is what matters the most. You can always go back and make it look prettier. But thank you for presenting, Daniel. Let's go ahead and get Kevin on the screen now.
Oh,
Oh, Justin.
I didn't do this, so it feels weird, but I'm just wondering, because it made me think of ideas. Would a way to handle this on the like to shorten that code to get it all contained in one button, would that be to like assign a class to those buttons and then on the JavaScript side, or well, on the HTML side, assign like a class to those buttons, like for the numbers be like class button or div class button or ID button or whatever. And then on the JavaScript side, create something that's just like take input of, I guess you'd take to have to have an input selection on that within a table tag or something. I'm sorry, I'm starting to ramble at this point. But would a classful approach on the HTML side make it so you could do a single function for the buttons on the JavaScript side to be like, okay, take whatever the value attribute for like an input button, plug that into the JavaScript. I'm sorry. If my question was clear.
I think I understand what you're trying to ask, and I think Keegan asked something very similar. Like, it seems very manual having to create all these different functions for every individual HTML tag. So you most definitely could give all these HTML tags a very similar class, right? Something that's each one of them shares. And then what you do is you assign this to every single button. You absolutely could. And what you will do is you can take the inner HTML to see what the HTML is. For example, if you have different divs, each div is a individual div for a number, right? For the button 1, button 2, button 3, so on and so forth. You absolutely could give each single one of these the same function, right? And the function is add the number to the display. But then you run into the problem, well, how do I know which button I'm accessing, whether it's button 1 or button 6? Well, the way that you do it is that you access the inner HTML, the text that you assign that div, right? Whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. And then you use that to identify which button you're working on and add that to the display. So there is a much more efficient way of doing it, absolutely. Is this method wrong? No, not at all. So I'm glad you are thinking ahead, like, how can I improve my code, make it a little bit more readable and consolidate it? If I know that I'm going to be writing this line of code multiple times, is there a more efficient way of doing it? And that's absolutely where your mind should be at. And some of us are in different levels, right? So Daniel's way is still good. Absolutely.
I was just trying to help with the brainstorming process.
No,
like
and that's
maybe
good.
like
That's good. I'm not bashing it, right? I agree. There is much more efficient ways of doing it. We absolutely can, and that comes with coding and learning. Like, you know what? I'm doing this pretty often. Like, I'm sure there has to be a much more efficient way. And I would say is get something on your screen first, and then once you have it working, you can always go back and refactor your code, right? Kind of go back and improve it, consolidate it a little bit better, put things together, or format them in a way that you don't have to repeat the same lines of code in the future, or make it a little bit more readable. So you definitely can. For some of you guys who are still starting off and that might not be a skill that you have just yet, the way that Daniel did it is absolutely perfect. But you obviously can do it better. Does that answer your question, Justin?
Uh, I think in the beginning you talked about some ideas. Yeah, again, I haven't done this, so I'm like brainstorming it for myself. I'm like, oh, what can I
Yeah,
do
yeah.
for this?
So yeah, you want to assign the tags a class name, right? And that's how you're going to reference them. If you see early on into the HTML, CSS conversations, the way that we access the tags was by the tag itself. Like we would grab the p tag or the div tags, and we would format them. But what that would do is that would impact every p tag or every div tag. So to avoid that, you assign them unique classes or unique IDs. That way, you only grab the tags that have those classes or IDs, right? So, yes, that is what we are doing here with the classes. Hopefully that answers the question. Kevin, can you share your screen? Are you ready? Oh, I was not ready to see my face like this.
My bad, man. But we're fixed now. We're working with fire now, so
Okay,
we got
awesome,
some.
awesome.
You can see this, right? Bad calculator.
Yes, we can.
All right, so very basic. I didn't really spend really much time on the CSS part of it because my brain has just been trying to relearn JavaScript again. So I've been focusing more on functionality. Um, I'll get to where I say there's like a bug, but the math actually does work with it. It actually prints out, the state actually updates, so it shows the user on the screen what they're actually doing, what they're adding, if you want to subtract. So all this is actually doing stuff, but like the main problem, and just to show off this, so these work as well. I didn't know if these were actually needed, so you can tell me if,
They're
like,
nuts. But
yeah,
I'm glad you kept them still, though.
yeah. So I did still keep that functionality in. The user, whenever they like hover over the buttons, they can see like what they're hovering on, and only thing I would maybe change is like when they click something, like it changes a different color. Just let them know that they actually did click on something. Um, but where the bug is, I'll show you what the bug actually is. It's like whenever I do two and I do two plus two, right, and then I hit
Hmm.
equal. Usually on a calculator, like if you press another number, it starts a whole new operation. But instead, if I press a number, I do like six, right? So I'm starting six and I want to add something, then it just deletes that and just keeps the total. Um, I was just scratching my head trying to figure out where exactly this is coming from. Um, but I just didn't really have enough time. I've been busy this weekend as well, so I couldn't really go back in here and actually figure that part out. I just wanted to get the basic functionality
You
stuff.
wanted to clear it? Is that what you're saying? You're saying when you press six and then you go to press the plus sign, you
Yeah,
want to clear it, but still hold the value somewhere.
exactly. So I do
Okay.
two plus three equal. It gets five. I expect if I press like a random number, I should get like another, number, and like it does it. But um, here's the code, like the code aspect of it. You can see it.
Right. I can.
So I have some events. So I made some flags. So operator flag, num string, total, new operation, and these just keep track of like the entire state because I just wanted to make sure I'm like keeping track of like the state of like this little calculator. So
You said the word state, and that's kind of what I was gonna go at, right? So whenever you're ready to, if you want to be able to have that functionality, you want to, as you mentioned, you want to hold on to that value and then not lose it, but still reset your display. And that's kind of the method you want to take here, is that you need to format or refactor the part of where you're pressing the buttons and what is happening to the display. You need to store the value that's on the display somewhere else and then clear it.
yeah, and I think honestly, from what I see, right, it's like if I go down, I think it's happening like after. So let me go back up a little bit. We are at uh, scroll down. Equal. So I'm pretty sure it's actually happening in this variable right here, but I just can't like just figure out. Like I was over time, this whole weekend I've just been a little like busy, especially yesterday with Mother's Day and stuff. So I couldn't really like focus too much on where exactly, um, where this bug was happening at.
So
But
you're pressing, whenever you press the equal sign, I'm assuming it's running this equal method.
yes, this function. So it's
And
running this.
then, Okay. Um, you're doing total plus equals number.
You could reset the num factor at the before you return anything.
Wait a minute, where exactly?
So where you see where how you have like total is equal to number. Once you get the total added to the number, just reset the number to be nothing.
Mm, okay, let me see.
So like after that line right there, just add a new line and then just be num is equal to nothing. So that way it zeroes out the number because I'm assuming that's what you're using to store the value of the pressing the button and the functions for it.
Yeah, so it's storing it within this total, like when you see it on the screen right here on line 165, like I'm calling that place on the HTML, and I'm actually placing the total on the screen. Um, maybe I let's see what happens. I don't know. I don't think that. Let me see what happens here now. So if I like do 5 plus 3 equals this, but then I do plus. Oh, hold on. Okay, but if I press a number and then plus, all right. So
Yeah, see what I was saying is you'd have to like have the rolling total zero out every time you press equals, unless you want to try to carry it over, or just use the num factor, that number factor as the value that is actually being held. You'd
yeah,
have to either add a temp value or reset that one value.
yeah, I think that's what it's looking like because this num value right here, actually, now that I'm looking, it's actually on line 19. It's like, oh, written the wrong way, sorry. But on line 19 right here, we're parsing that string because when this number string is actually like when the user types in like buttons, that's actually a string at first. And then once you hit equal, that's when it like parses this and then turns it into like an actual number and then goes through here and, does this whole operations, any of the operations that we give it.
Yeah, it's gonna have to come down to you having to store it somewhere temporarily or handle the functionality of how it's going to control your display and your running total throughout the entire thing. It's just saving it somewhere else so you can use it and doesn't get erased. Um,
Right.
we
Um,
could definitely do it much later because I feel there's a lot of code here that we have to kind of parse through.
yeah,
Uh,
it's a whole
but
mess. It feels like.
yeah, pretty much bottom line up front, you need to create some kind of other temporary value so you don't lose it, and then clear your result. That's what you're trying to do.
I got you. But yeah, this is the calculator. I mean, it has some little funny stuff too. If you do divided by zero, it just tells you it's divided by zero is illegal. And, but it
Yeah,
keeps,
good.
but it does keep the same total right here. So the total, it doesn't change this total. So if the user still wants to use that total, they can like do something else. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
a good.
pretty good, man. This is pretty good for you guys. This is the first time you guys ever worked with JavaScript and HTML. This is I'm sure it's probably pretty fun. But good stuff. You guys have done pretty good over the weekend for those of you that were able to complete it. Good work. But all right, let's go ahead and continue to today's class. We're going to finish off our JavaScript lesson. We should all be seeing the slides on my screen. We just finished the bad calculator, right? We initially started off with something like this, and then we use everything that we were talking about to hopefully get something that looked like this. I understand it didn't look exactly like that, but the functionality is what really matters the most. So good stuff for you guys. If you want to continue expanding on the project, I would, so you can continue getting some experience with CSS. If not, that's okay too. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the last exercise for this lesson, which is going to be the day of the week, right? And then for those of you who were able to do the bad calculator, this is going to be a very, very easy assignment. It's actually, I should have put this one first before we got to the bad calculator because this one's going to feel like a cakewalk compared to the bad calculator. Um, but the day of the week is pretty straightforward. Let me go and open with live server. Let's see for this is not what I was looking for. Uh, Give me a second. Day of week.
So Roger, I was having the same issue. It's like if you click in, like right click in the actual screen of the HTML file that you want to open, then it'll
Oh,
work that way. Or no, go back to your VS Code and then just right click into there, right click on the screen, and then it opens it up. I was having the same issue over the weekend.
yeah, V is this thing is pretty annoying. Um, my live server has been horrible. Let me stop it and open live server again. Uh, Let me just go ahead and delete this. I know what it is. It's this file right here, but I don't need this. FOP summer, lesson 4, day of the week. There we go. All right. You should see something like this. Right. It's a simple H tag with the what is today. We have a form. We have yet to actually use the form in real time. But real quickly, just to talk about the form, it's like a div that allows you to collect the input that's going to be inside of the child tags that you might have. We see here the form tag is being opened up. They create an input tag and a label tag. Typically, these two go here together, right? You want to create the box where you're going to be taking input. Now, when you want to put a description of what that box should be holding, you want to add a label, right? And this is where you add that text where you see day of the week, right? So they added a label. They have an input tag with a placeholder to show this grayed out text of day of the week. And then we have a button, right? And this is the first time we see buttons. We've been using this, but it's going to be fairly similar syntax. We have here the button. They put the type, which is just a button itself. They gave it a name and they gave it some inner text of check, right? Uh, Finally, they also have an H2 tag that says place to see, but notice there's nothing in here, right? Your assignment is to complete a small application that lets the user know if they imputed a weekday, weekend, or they have an incorrect day of the week. Make sure your application is case sensitive. So Saturday with capital S is treated the same as Saturday, all caps, or as you see here, God dang it, dude, this is horrible. Or as you see here, where the Saturday looks like it's in camel case almost, right? So we should be able to put in any version of this and still be able to identify if it's Saturday in general, right? Um, so whatever they put into the input tag, you're going to display something in this H2 element where you have the ID of place to see, where you're going to say it's either a weekday, a weekend, or they gave the incorrect day of the week, right? It's fairly simple, pretty straightforward. For those of you who did not get more practice with the bad calculator, this should kind of get you spun up a little bit. So I should be able to come in here and say Sunday. Let's see, it's camel case, and then press check. And after I press check, it should update this H2 element to tell me whether it's a weekday or a weekend, or if it wasn't even a day at all, right? So what should your JavaScript do? Your JavaScript should be able to, when you press this button, it's going to grab the text that's inside this input box. It's going to be able to format it and then check if it's a weekday, a weekend, or if it's none of those. Depending on which one it is, we're going to display something in the H2 tag, right? Very straightforward. This is just kind of getting you started working with boxes. I'm sorry, not boxes, input boxes and buttons, right? So where should your JavaScript work on? Your JavaScript should probably be given to this button, right? This button probably needs to have some kind of event listener, right? And then once this button is clicked, this button needs to be able to run a function that's going to grab the input from the input box do some kind of conditional statement or if else statement. Depending on whether it passed or not, is going to determine what is going to place in the H2 test. Are there any questions on this? Okay. Time is 6:04. We're going to work on this till 6:20. At 6:20, we're going to come back. We'll give a quick demonstration, and then we'll go on our first break of the day. I will see you guys in a little bit. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Do I have any volunteers for the day of the week assignments?
I could show mine.
Is it complete, Nick?
I think so.
All right, let's see it.
Okay. All right, let me know when you can see my screen.
I see it.
Okay, so the three checks are, or I guess the three things that it wanted were to tell you if it's a weekday, a weekend, or an incorrect day of the week and not be case sensitive. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. How do I make this go away? There we go. Okay, so if you type in Sunday, all lowercase, check, tells you it's the weekend. Spell it with weird capitalizations. Oops. It still works. Same thing with Monday. Why does it keep doing that? I think I'm slapping the refresh key with my hand. Tuesday. Let's make a weird capital in there. Tuesday. Friday. And then if you type in something that isn't one of those days of the week, you gave an incorrect day of the week.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, spot on. Let's go ahead and expand your VS Code. Can we see your code real quick? Yeah,
So all I did was, it's just a chained if statement. So if it's Sunday or Saturday, you say weekend. If it's any of the weekdays, you say weekday. And if anything else, you say you gave an incorrect day of the week. And everything has got a .2 lowercase, so no matter what, it checks it regardless of case sensitivity or whatever their case is.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, pretty spot on. I see here on line 1, you create a query selector where you grab the element with the ID of check. You add an event listener for click, and then you're running the check day function. You then have the check day function here on line 3, which is going to grab the hashtag day element, which I can only assume here is the input tag. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. You're grabbing the input tag, and then you access its value by using the dot value command, and then assign whatever comes back from this into the day variable. And then after that, it was just pretty much an if-else statement, checking whether it was the correct output or not, which is pretty cool. Yeah, very straightforward. Justin, I see you have a question.
Yes, I've got the same thing, except I'm trying to I'm trying to run that two lowercase within the actual declared variable, and I can't seem to get it to work.
Share?
Within the declaration statement, sure. Well, yeah, I don't have it currently, but let me share this. Okay, so what I was trying to do was wrap, you can see this, right?
Right.
What I was trying to do was do something along these lines, and then wrap all that in something like that, and then hit two lowercase here, and it's not working, or
even if you remove the string.
oh wait, no, never mind. It totally is working. I don't know what was going wrong.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're good then.
Okay,
And
yeah, right
hi
on.
guys, this is my code.
Yeah, good
Mhm.
stuff. Another method that I usually see is maybe creating two different lists, one called weekday and weekend, and
That,
then you check. Oh, what was that, Keegan?
that's exactly what I got.
Yeah, I figured someone would have done that. I usually see one or the other. You can create two lists for weekend and weekday, and then you grab the value within the tag, you make it to lowercase, and then you just check if it's in the list or not. And then, you know, it looks a little bit cleaner, but this still works as well. So whichever method you guys decide to go with, is fine. You guys are using those tools in your tool belt and reaching an outcome. So good stuff. Very straightforward. As you see, compared to the calculator, this is significantly easier. So if you were able to do the bad calculator, this one should be a walk in the park. But yeah, so time is 6:27, guys. Let's go ahead and go on our first 10-minute break. Upon return, we're going to start today's new lesson, which should be lesson 5, APIs. So I will see you guys at 6:37. Welcome back, guys. We are going to go into our next lesson, which is going to be APIs. I've received so many questions from you guys about this. So finally, we're going to go ahead and touch up on it. APIs. What are APIs? APIs are, in short, is just a simple interface for a complex action. API stands for Application Programming Interfaces, right? Which is such a fancy word. Um, it can get very confusing. An API is essentially going to be a form of an application that holds data, right? Which you can leverage, right? The example we are going to use today is going to be the dog API for the very first one, right? This dog API is essentially a website that gives you access to images of dogs, right? APIs technically are just like a collection of data that you are able to use in your applications to essentially not have to recreate the wheel, right? The example I gave while we were off screen was during my personal project when I was in Platoon, I wanted to create a streaming service, right? So I can stream music, let my users, create their own playlists and stuff like that. But the issue that I encountered was, where do I get this music from, right? I don't have, thousands or millions of data worth of music, artist names, music albums, stuff like that, right? Where was I going to get this information, right? So what I ended up using was I used the Spotify API, right? So Spotify uh, allows developers to leverage off the data they have for their app of all their music that they stream. That way, other people are able to recreate their own applications using the large collection of music that they have in their libraries, right? So that's in short what an API is. A different analogy here that we see on our screen is going to be like a restaurant menu, right? Uh, I want you to think of the API as the restaurant itself, right? The restaurant can provide you with all types of different food. Now, when you go to this restaurant, you're presented with a menu that tells you what you have access to or what you can order, right? You go to the menu, you figure out what you want from this restaurant. In the same context, when working with API, there's documentation that shows you how you communicate with the API and the different data that they provide for you, as well as how to receive this data, right? Back to a restaurant analogy, once you figure out what you want, right? Let's say you want this chicken here. Well, then you would tell your server, right? You would put in a request to your server, quite literally, right? The server that you want a large chicken, right? With a side of mashed potatoes and gravy. Your server is going to take your order, right? Your request, and send it to the kitchen, right? The back, right? The API. With your request, he's going to look through their, I guess, their kitchen, grab what you requested, and then it's going to bring it back to you. And now you have this plate of chicken, right? The same context for APIs, right? You give the API a request of what you want, right? The server is going to take your request. It's going to look through its server and look for what you requested. And then it's going to grab the items. It's going to send it back to you so you can use it, all right? The APIs are essentially just simple interfaces that lets you communicate with the kitchen to let them know what we want to eat. The kitchen is the actual database, the data that's holding all this information. The API is the interface, what you are going to be using to talk to grab this information. How do we use APIs, right? We essentially use URL, or I guess endpoints, right? You're going to use these endpoints, these URLs, to put in a request to the API, right? This API is going to take your request is going to send it to its servers, grab the contents that is described in your request, and it's going to send it back to you, right? It's going to send you the information in the form of, technically it's called a promise, right? It's essentially an object. And then we have to convert this object into something that is readable. So we are going to convert whatever comes back from this API into JSON formats, right? Something that we can use within our application. After we receive the information, we can then access it and do whatever we want to do with it, right? Think of like your phone, right? Your phone is, whenever you're running an application, whether it's your laptop too, right? They're going to put in some requests to the API. The API is going to grab the information. It's going to send it back to you. It'll make a little bit more sense once we start talking about it. Here is going to be your example of how you're going to talk to an API, right? I'm going to show you two different ways. There is an old way, and then there is the more newer way. Now, you might be asking, Roger, why are we learning the old way then? If there's already a much better way of doing this. Well, because whenever you go to, work for some company, unless you're working for a startup, they're already going to have a pre-established code base, right? Depending on how old the company is. If you're working a federal job, or if you're working, commercial, their code base is going to differ, right? Different programming languages, different versions of these programming languages, and they're going to have a large code base already established. You're going to encounter code that might seem pretty outdated. So do not be surprised if you encounter code like this, right? So it's important to be able to identify the different ways of doing this. So we're going to talk about the old way, and then we're going to talk about the much more newer way of doing things, right? So this is going to be the old way, right? Using the fetch method and the .then syntax, right? So let me go ahead and just break down what this code is doing. The first line, they're using the fetch method, right? It is a pre-built method that's with JavaScript. And what this method does, it takes in a URL, right? You can see here, this is the URL to some website called dog.ceo. And then there's a couple of paths here within the URL. I can see that we're accessing the API. We're from then accessing their breeds, we're grabbing their images, and we are grabbing a random one, right? So I can kind of already tell by the way that they have structured their endpoints. This fetch method is going to put in the request to this API, right? It's going to take this URL and is going to talk to that API. Once the information comes back, we invoke the .then method, right? And we have a structure like this for readability. Essentially, this .then method is at the end of the fetch request. We're pretty much invoking like a method, very similar to like the two uppercase method that you guys were just using within the day of the week. They're invoking the .then method within the fetch method, right? Whatever comes back from this fetch method, we're going to use the .then. And then the syntax for this is we take whatever comes back from the fetch request, and we're going to convert it into JSON using the .json method, right? So whenever this fetch request goes and talks to an API, it's going to return to you a promise. And it's called a promise because it's not instant, right? Promises It's called promise because there might be something coming back that's usable, or there might not be, right? It's going to depend on whether the fetch request was successful, right? This is a very simple API. So all it takes is a URL. But as the APIs get more complex, you're going to see that some APIs are going to require authentication. You might require some kind of secret key, right? You might have to log in, get verified. So they get very complex. This one's very simple. All it does is take the URL. But this request is going to be sent out, just a URL. It's going to ask the API, hey, I want a random photo of any breed of your dogs, right? And then send back a promise. This promise is an object. This object is either going to have one or two things. One, it's going to have the information you requested, or two, it's going to have some kind of error message telling you, hey, I couldn't find it, or it doesn't exist, or you don't have, the authorization to request this information. So here's your error message. Kick rocks, right? So that's what that promise is. It's a promise that I might get you the information, I might not, right? Once we get this promise back, what we do is we start parsing through it, right? We have to parse through it, but it's still not in a format that our JavaScript file is able to handle, right? It's in the shape of an object. For those of you who do not have experience with objects, this might seem a little confusing. It'll make a little bit more sense once we start talking about objects. Just know that this object we aren't able to just parse through it. There are specific methods that you have to use to be able to essentially almost like decipher it, or decipher it, where you can make it into a format that you can read and use. And that method is by using the .json method. It's going to take this object, you're going to invoke the .json method onto it, and it's going to put it in a readable format, right? Afterwards, we once again invoke the .then method to the .json, right? We have to wait until it completes parsing through the data and creates a .json object that we can use. That .then method is saying, hey, once you're done formatting the response into a JSON format, then I want to console.log it. Now, these keywords rest and data, they're essentially like temporary parameters that we are using to be able to reference what's returning from these methods, right? So we can call it data, you can call it something else if you like, but we are going to go ahead, give it a name. We gave it the name data, and then we want to console.log the data. You might see this, for those of you who are not familiar with this, this is called error handling, because as you already noticed from what I've been telling you, the promise isn't always going to give you what you're asking for. It might give it to you or it might not. In the event it doesn't give you something that can be converted into JSON and usable, what it's going to do is going to give you an error. So we are essentially adding error handling here. In the event we get an error, I want to be able to catch that error and then console.log it to see what that error is, right? Does everyone understand this or have any questions about what this piece of code is doing or asking of you? Okay, before we jump into it, let's go ahead and look at the dog API so we can see what it physically looks like. You want to go to Google and you just, oh no. I bet. Show you guys my email. And Google, you want to type in dog API, and it will literally be the very first one. It should be the dog.ceo one, and that'll take you to this page right here. Right, once we are here, you're gonna notice a couple things. On the left side, you have the navigation bar. There is documentation. Almost every single API, if it's a good API, it's gonna have documentation. Some documentation is gonna be a little bit more in depth than others, depending on how complex the API is. All right. This one, because it's such a simple API, it's already giving you an example of how it works. I think we're already at the documentation. Oh, we're not. But when I click the documentation, it's going to show me this. It's going to show me the endpoints, right? The endpoints are the URL paths, right? what is the endpoints that I can ping or make a request to get different things. We have endpoints for grabbing all breeds, a random image, if I want to grab it by breed, by subbreed, or browse breed lists. Right now, we are at the list all breeds endpoint, and it quite literally gives me the endpoint that I need to be using in my API call. This endpoint is going to return to me a JSON that looks fairly similar to this, right? It is essentially an object in JavaScript, right? That has key value pairs. The first one is message, and we see here it has a value of a other object, which has all the different breeds. So we're going to have to parse through this information, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So this one returns to me all breeds. I could do random image. Notice that I'm getting a different URL path. Right here it is. And this is what it's returning, right? This URL path, this endpoint, returns to me a much smaller one, obviously, because there's only one dog. It is a object with two key value pairs, message and status. The message is a URL to an image, and the status is success, letting me know that this was a successful call. If I press fetch, you'll see here that because this is a random endpoint, every single time that this endpoint runs, it's giving me a different image. All right. There's even some more customization to this URL endpoint. We can do random, and then we can pass in a key of 3, and it'll return 3 images. There is subbreed, and notice how they're all different. There's different methods of using them. These are not random. If you're asking yourself, Roger, how are these created? When people create their APIs, you literally write your endpoint and how it's supposed to work. You guys will be doing this for your own backends when getting into backend development within the immersion program. So you will learn how to do all of this and how to create your own APIs. This is skill itself. But without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the assignments. Oh, pause. Not just yet. Here is the example of the fetch request that you should get, right? Whenever you do the assignment, you're going to get something fairly similar to this. It's going to be literally the JSON that the API showed you you're going to get. And we're going to talk about how we're going to work with this. Here is the JavaScript in HTML. The JavaScript is already made for you, right? It's already here. Let me show you how it's working. Here is my JavaScript. And here is my document. As you see, there's nothing there. I can go to the doc photo HTML. There technically is an image tag, but as you see, there is nothing here, right? It's an empty image tag. And then there is a script that's connected to it. It's in the body, but it's okay. Right? Your goal is to make this fetch request work and then edit your HTML document to demonstrate the photo. Let me show you what this is doing right now. Because as you can see, we're console.logging data. I'm going to open up the inspect tool, and I'm going to go to the console. And there's already something that was printed out because when this website ran, it automatically ran this fetch request. And then I got the data, and I'm console.logging this data, right? It even tells you here within app.js on line 4. This was on line 4. That's what console.logging is. I can open it up, and I see here that this fetch request was successful. I'm able to ping that API, get data, and I'm console.logging it. And if I refresh this, you see here it refreshes. Let's look at the URL. I see Terrier Welsh Lucy. Let me refresh it again. This time I got a Kubosh. I don't know what that is. I refresh it. I got an elk hound Norwegian. So why is this changing every single time? Well, because the fetch request that's being made right now is to the random endpoint. So it's going to give me a random breed every single time. But the fetch request, as of right now, is already pre-built for you. The only thing that you guys have to do for this assignment is take this, parse through the JSON object, and manipulate the image tag to demonstrate the photo. Right? Display the random photo that is returned from the API on the DOM. So the fetch request is already pre-built for you. Right now, we are practicing how to work with the JSON. So do I have any questions before we try this for 10 minutes? All right, time is 6:57. We'll come back at 7:07. All right, before we wait on our assignment, I assigned you guys the dog photo API. I'm gonna do a quick walkthrough for those of you who maybe struggled through it, right? So as we already saw, where's my dog API? Right, every time that I refresh the page, I am getting something here. I see the message, right? So the way that we were supposed to essentially come to an example was being able to parse through the information. As of right now, I'm getting all of data, right? The only thing I really want here is whatever is assigned into message. So what you should have done is gone into this JSON object by using bracket notation. I saw Keegan use dot notation. That's okay. But here I'm able to grab the key of message, right? And they should return to me the value of message. And if I refresh this, I gotta save this, my bad. I now only receive the URL every single time, right? So you want to only grab what you need, right? That's the reason why we convert it into a JSON, and it's very important to understand how to use key values, how to access these key value pairs, and really know how to access, multi-layered uh, data structures, right? Because this is a very simple JavaScript object, right? We're going to see more complex ones as we progress through our lessons, where they get very, very, you know, crazy. They get really in depth. They're very nested, right? We have dictionary within lists inside dictionaries. It gets very complex. So it's important to be able to read all this. And you only get better by reading it. So once I know how to grab the data, I'm gonna keep the constant log here just so I can keep visually seeing what's happening here. But I'm gonna want to access the HTML tag of image. So I can either access the HTML tag directly, or I can give it a class, which is a much better practice. And I'm gonna say dog image, and I'm gonna grab this image tag by using the class itself, right? So returning back to my JavaScript, I'm going to say document dot query selector, and I'm going to grab dog image, and then I'm going to access its source by using dot src, and then I'm going to give it the data message. All right. I get issue cannot set properties of no dog image line 8. Setting source. What are you talking about? Dog image. What do you guys see that I do not see? I don't think it'll matter, but data message. Why is it not liking this? Oh my god. Please tell me it's not what I think it is. God, I hate it. I didn't save my HTML document. Ah, that's so annoying. There we go. I was so confused. I was like, what is going on? There's nothing wrong here. But there we go. So now we are getting a different image every single time that I refresh my page. It's working, right? It's as simple as that. Just really manipulating your HTML tags by using the DOM. You already have the URL. It's just really setting it into the attribute, right? Now, that's cool. But what is happening every single time that I refresh the page? Well, what's happening is that it's going to run through my HTML document. It gets to the script line on my HTML document. So like, all right, I see you got a script here. Let me go to and find this JavaScript file that you're trying to assign as a script. It opens up the JavaScript file and it runs it line by line from top to bottom. As it stands right now, fetch is just out in the open, right? It gets to the fetch method and immediately just starts making its API call, right? It sends this request. This request goes out to the API. It grabs the information from the database. It returns to you the data to the API. The API sends it to us in the form of a response. And then we access it and grab the information and we can use it on our browser, right? Pretty straightforward. What if I did not want this website to work in the manner that is, right? This isn't really, what's the word I'm looking for? Intuitive? Is that the word? I don't know. English is my second language, right? Maybe this isn't the best method of doing stuff. Maybe I should have a button that does this, right? I don't want this. Maybe I wouldn't want this to give me a random image every single time I refresh. Maybe I want to do this only when I tell it to do it, right? How could I refactor this so I isolate it into some method that I can make this run whenever I press a button?
Throw it into a function.
Yeah, I could probably throw it to a function. So this probably gonna stay the same, but how would I create something and give it give it a function? What would I want to do? What would I want to create?
Create a button on your HTML.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do button, right? And we can say type equal button, and we can say get random dog photo. And here is that button here. I'm gonna give it a class of generate dog, so I can access it. Right, but here's my button. Right, it has a class of generate dog, and I want this to do something. Right, right now when I click it, it does absolutely nothing. But this should not give me a random photo every single time I refresh it. I should ideally be able to create a function on a button that I'm able to press and grab a random photo. Think of when you log in, right? When you guys go onto Instagram or Facebook or anything that you're logging in, you want to put in your information somewhere and then press a button to send a request to your backend where it grabs the user's information and then logs you in, right? That's probably a much better way of doing it, a little bit more efficient. It shouldn't just log you in every single time that you refresh your page. You want this to work within a button inside a function. So now that I have this button, I'm gonna go ahead and come back to my JavaScript and I want to grab this button. So I'm going to say document dot query selector. I'm going to grab, was it generate dog? What do I call it? Yeah, generate dog, which is my button. And then I'm going to add an event listener to this bad boy. The event is going to be click. And then the function is going to be generate dog. Let me close it up a little bit. There we go. I want to generate a dog. This is the function that I'm going to use to generate this. It doesn't exist yet, so let's create it. I'm going to say function generate dog. And I misspelled this, function. There we go. And all I really have to do is move this inside of my function. So now, let me save this. When I press this button, it'll generate me an image.
What the hell?
What's going on, Keegan?
Can you go to your HTML real quick?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I see what I did wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. But there you have it. We now have a button that is no longer just going to run. I'm sorry. We now have a website that's no longer just going to give me a dog every single time I refresh. I have to manually press this because this is the kind of functionality I want, right? So, yeah. Do I have any questions? Daniel, I see you have your mic muted. You got a question?
Oh no, I don't have any questions.
Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and continue with our class. So that was the dog photo. Query parameters. So we had a very simple one, a very simple API call, just the URL itself. You will also have other endpoints, as we saw during the dog API, that has some optional inputs. Think of it like by breed. When you look at this URL path, you see that this input has hound here. But what if I wanted golden retriever? Right? What if I wanted something very specific? How do we query for a very specific item? We don't want just a random stuff, right? We have different endpoints for that, right? We have endpoints that should be able to take in some kind of input, and then it's going to go to that endpoint and grab what we want, right? The example we're going to use is going to be the cocktail DB. Let's go ahead and go to the cocktail API. It should be the very first one, free cocktail API. And you click it, and you should see something like this. As I mentioned, all APIs are a little bit different, right? Some have a little bit more in-depth documentation. Some are very straightforward. Here, I get all the endpoints right off the bat in the home page, and I can see them. We have search cocktail by name. We have by first letter. Search ingredient by name. Look up full cocktail details by ID. So they have a huge list of different endpoints that we are able to use to query different things, right? Some APIs require you to pay. We're not going to pay. We're using the free version. But notice that the search API by name, it has search.php question mark s is equal to margarita, right? So these endpoints, they're structured in a way where there's certain parts of the URL where if you change the URL, it's going to give you something different, right? When you guys get into backend development and the immersive program, you're going to be creating very specific endpoints that should be able to take in text or ID, so you're able to get different things, right? This is just a prime example. So that margarita one, here we see a little quick code snippet of how it looks like. We have the cocktail DB URL endpoint. This endpoint specifically grabs it by name, right? It's going to return to you a cocktail by a name. I can see here by reading the URL path, at the very end, they have the name margarita. Right, so this endpoint, after reading through the documentation, I can see that it's probably going to grab me a very specific cocktail. And I can see here what it returns. It returns to me a key value pair of drinks, where the value is an array of all the different types of margaritas that it has. This array has different other objects with key value pairs for the IDs, the drink name under stream drink. There is, I see there's options for videos, but none of these have videos. But we can see here that this is the kind of code snippet I'm gonna get back, the type of JSON I'm gonna get back. So let's give it a try. Oh, here's another example. Here's the martini one. Notice how the only thing that changed here was the end. Instead of margarita, we have martini, and we have a different output, right? We are getting other versions of martinis, and this one has a lot more variation than margarita, but still returned to us in the same format. Nothing else has changed here, guys. The only thing that's changed was the endpoint that we are using for the databases, right? These endpoints allow us to give it specific query parameters to grab something a little bit more specific than just a random photo. Which then brings us to cocktails.html. Let's check it out. Cocktails.html. Let me close up this one. And then let's open this bad boy up on live server. Less than 5. Cocktails.html. All right. I have, looking at the HTML, I have the header, which cocktail. I have an input tag, and a button, right? They don't have any classes or IDs. I did have an H2 tag for name. I can already guess I'm going to go ahead and put the name somewhere around here. I have an image where the image should go. It has no source or no alternative. And then I have instructions, right? At the very end, we have the script as well. You're going to write the code that will allow the user to enter a cocktail and have the DOM render the name, photo, and instructions on how to make it on the button click. Right, so I should be able to come here, type in martini, and press get cocktail. And this get cocktail button should put in a request to the cocktail database and then parse through the data and manipulate the name, the image, and the instructions with the information that's going to come back from the database. Let's look at the JavaScript. The JavaScript is, to a certain extent, pre-built for you. As of right now, it's hard-coded to have margarita in it. Let's look at the console. So the button doesn't work, but it is in the same state the dog assignment was in, where every time I refresh, I get drinks. But because the URL has margarita hard-coded into it, every single time I refresh, it's just margarita. So once again, you need to be able to add something within the input tag. On the click of the get cocktail button, you should be able to grab the information within the input tag, use that text to manipulate your fetch request to the cocktail API. Upon return of your promise, you're going to parse through the data, and then using the data, update the name, the image, and the instructions. Do I have any questions? All right, time is 7:25. I want you guys to work until 7:40. At 7:40, go on your last 10-minute break. And then at 7:50, we will reconvene and work through this. Sound good? All right, welcome back. Was anybody able to finish the assignment?
Nope.
Okay. One. Anybody?
No, I was having issues with trying to grab the input actual
Sure.
value, and then I like had the rest set up for concatenating the URL and everything like that. in the function for the search to input the URL, but it was just grabbing that value.
Okay. I was really banking on all of you guys or some of y'all finish it, for example, but I guess I'll code it. All right. Let's see. So up to this point, we have Margarita hard coded in here, right? We saw that Margarita is within the URL. Every time we refresh this, we're getting something different. But that's not what we want, right? As you guys mentioned, we need to be able to put in some input here, press the button, and grab that input. So let's go ahead and create a function for this button, right? Our button does not have any class. I'm gonna call it class. I'm gonna say grab or fetch cocktail. Fetch cocktail. We'll get a fetch cocktail class. And then we're going to use this class to grab it within our JavaScript documents. We're gonna say document.querySelector, and I'm going to grab fetch cocktail. My memory is horrible. That is what I called it, right? Yeah, fetch cocktail. Awesome. This is going to grab that button, and I'm going to give it an event listener, which is going to be a click event, and I want to run a method called fetch cocktail. But it doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to create this function. I'm going to say function fetch cocktail. And before I actually start trying to run this fetch command, I'm going to try to console.log whatever is within this input tag, right? Now, how do I grab it? Well, let's see. Look at the input tag. It has name. It has no value, right? If I hard code this, let's say I say hello, and I save this, I see hello gets populated here. So what I can already tell is that value allows me to set something already preset within here, but I can also probably use the value attribute to grab what's in here, right? As of right now, or as it was earlier, there was nothing in here. It was set to 0. I'll just give it a name. I don't know why. What the name's gonna do, to be honest. Let's see. I don't really ever give these names, but what really matters here is a value attribute. This is what's determining what's inside of it or not. So I want to grab this value, but first let's give it a class as well so I can access it from my JavaScript file without having to use the element. And I'm going to say user input. Now with that class set, I'm going to try to grab it. I'm going to say document.querySelector. I want to grab the user input tag, which is the input tag, right? And I'm gonna grab the dot value and I'm gonna print it out. Now this method is going to run every single time I press the get cocktail method. So let's go ahead and say martini. Nick, I appreciate it, but I'm already this deep in, so I'm gonna go ahead and just do it. But here's the martini. And I press get cocktail and I see that it's printing it out. And every single time I press it, the number to the left of it is increasing, kind of just showing me that it's being printed out multiple times. So I now have a working button that is able to grab the value from our input tag and even display it, right? So far, so good. We got something working. I'm able to grab the information from the martini. I'm sorry, not the martini, from the input tag. And that's what really matters here. We want to be able to pass it anything like tequila sunrise and then do something with that string, right? So with that in mind, let me go ahead and I'm going to remove this this console.log and I'm going to save this value here into a variable. I'm going to say let desired drink is equal to the value of I'm grabbing from that, right? Now that we have the value, it's time to actually do this fetch request. Let me go ahead and move this down here, right? It's going to be put within my function. So whenever I press this button, I can run the function, right? Now, as it stands right now, Margarita is hard-coded in here. For string interpolation inside of JavaScript, if I remember correctly, we have to use the backtick. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the single quotes, and I'm going to add the backticks in here to make it an interpolated string, right? And then where I have Margarita, I am going to instead add a variable in here that's going to be the desired drink. So now when I put in this API request, instead of having hard coded to Margarita, whatever was added to the input tag is going to be interpolated into this URL string, which I can then make a request to. So let's go ahead. I'm going to use Margarita as an example first so I can make sure it's still working. And I see Margarita is there. Let me go ahead and save this. I don't think I saved it. There we go. Margarita. Notice my fetch request never ran automatically, right? Because it's now within the function. I have Margarita in here. I press get cocktail, and there it is. I'm seeing the response that came back from the API, right? Let's change it again. Let's say martini. And I'm going to put get cocktail, and here is the martini. So it's working, right? I have value within this input tag that I'm able to grab and then use string interpolation to put it within my URL and have a working button that isn't just hard coded to one specific item. Now I can add multiple things in here. Now you're gonna see that Moscow Mule is not gonna work. We're gonna have to use something different because these are two different words. It'll probably fail. Oh, I take that back. Okay. It did work. Never mind. That's actually very surprising. Last time we did this, it didn't work. Maybe they updated it. I don't know. That's cool. But let's go ahead and come back to it. So that worked. I guess I have to take that out of the slides now. But before it didn't work. We had to kind of handle a string that had spaces in it or something like that, right? But so far so good. But now we have the next part, which is manipulating the name, the image, and the H3. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna manipulate the image first, so we can get something on here. The name and the instructions is gonna be a little bit different, but I'm gonna go ahead and grab this image by giving it a class. I'm gonna say drink image, and then I'm gonna say document dot query selector. I'm gonna say class drink image dot src is equal to data. Oh Lord, I forgot what it was giving me. Margarita. Okay, I have to go into drinks. So I want to go into the key of drinks. Okay, I go into the key of drinks, and then after that, I get back an array. And I want to grab what it looks like. It's going to be key. There's no. Oh, there is. My bad. I have to open it up. It's an array of key value pairs. I'm going to grab the first item. I see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to grab index 0. Save this again. I'm going to run it again and see what I get now. Let me console.log this instead. I'm going to say data drinks 0. There we go. So I can see what I'm nesting into. Oh no. Stand by, guys.
Is it not an object and you can't call the first?
No, it's working. I think it's just 'cause I'm trying to. There it is. It's because I have this right here. I was trying to set the SRC as this, but it wasn't an actual source. It was giving me an error, and it wasn't even getting to line 11.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was quitting here because of the error. But there you go. I commented out so I can kind of come in here and figure this out. Okay, so I'm in here now. I grabbed the first item in all the drinks that was on index 0. And now within here, I want to grab the key of, let's see, where's the image at? Here it is. String drink thumb is a JPEG image. So I'm going to grab string drink thumb. I'm assuming for thumbnail. Let's send this again. And here is my URL. All right, so this is the item that I want. I'm gonna go ahead and add this within my source. And then comment this back in. Save it, and then let's go ahead and run get cocktail. And I might be getting an issue here. Let's check out the console. I am grabbing probably the wrong thing. String drink thumb. String drink thumb. I have to, oh my bad, I have to save my HTML. I do that every single time. Let's go ahead and do it again. Margarita. It's popping up. There is my image. All right, so cool. I'm grabbing the image now. That's success. Right? Cool. Now, I got the image, but now I need to do the name and the instructions. I saw Keegan, you did like a victory pose.
Yeah. So where I was stuck is I thought data was already inside of the drinks array, if you will. Like I thought drinks was by itself, so I was missing that access point for the arrays, and that's
Okay.
what was killing me. So I've got it now. Thank you.
Yeah, that JSON structure can be very confusing. It's a skill that you'll get as you work more with JSON. No worries, you'll get more than enough practice with it. All right, so we got that, but we still need the name and the instructions. So let's look at the name. The name is an H2 element. I'm gonna want to be able to change this to the name, but I ideally still want the name string in here. Maybe add like a colon, space, and then the drink name, right? Kind of format it. So let me just go ahead and add the colon here and the space. There we go. But I'm going to want to add something to this H2 element. So let's go ahead and give it a class. Class is going to be drink name. All right. And then finally, let's go ahead and also grab it from our JSON. I'm sorry, my JavaScript file. Query selector. Drink name. And then I'm going to say, I want to say dot inner HTML. I'm going to just assign it the name right off the bat for now. But I'm going to want to manipulate this instead. I just want to make sure I can grab something in here first. Let's see what it's looking like.
You're missing the S in drinks.
Thank you for that.
No worries.
Yeah, so I'm obviously getting an object, so it's not exactly giving me what I want. But once I come into drinks, I go to index 0. And then I'm going to want to grab
String drink.
String drink. Thank you. Yes, string drink. So string drink. Let's try it out. Awesome. So I'm getting margarita. But it overrode the name text, and that's not really what I want. So what we could probably do is something like let current name is equal to document dot query selector. I'm gonna grab the drink name h2 tag, and I'm going to save the inner HTML to current name. And then what I'm going to do is say, I'm going to use an interpolated string. I'm going to say current name. And then I'm going to add this within here. And I'm going to pass it in. And let's see how this looks. Run it again. Margarita. There we go. So now I have margarita right after the name title, so it doesn't override the text I already had there. It creates an interpolated string with what it used to be there before, and what I'm gonna append to it, and then I'll reassign it the new HTML, right? So I don't lose that name value, right? And then finally, we have instructions, right? We need to add the instruction within here. So how can we do this without overriding the instructions? Because we really don't want to append it right after. I mean, we could probably do something very similar to this. We could say, let's go ahead and grab the instructions. I'm gonna give it a class, and I'm gonna say drink instructions, and then once again, I'm gonna grab the current instructions. Current instruction is equal to document dot query selector. There's probably a much better way of doing this. It actually is. But for the sake of explaining what's happening, we'll say drink instructions. I'm gonna grab the inner HTML. Once I have that, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to grab it again. Drink instructions. The inner HTML is equal to an interpolated string. I'm going to pass in the current instruction with a colon, and then I'm gonna add a new line by using the /n. And afterwards, I'm going to pass in data drinks at index 0. And what is a key for instructions? Anybody? Okay, you're muted.
STR instructions with a capital I.
All right, let's try it out. Let's see how this works. Let me also save my HTML document because that always gets me. There we go. And once again, try out margarita, get cocktail. There's my image. And it did not give me the new line, unfortunately. We'll see how we can make this work. But regardless, here is the instructions. There's a much better way of doing this, right? The instructions probably should not be an H2 element, right? Who can think of a way that we can probably manipulate this? So instead of adding it to an H2 element, we create our own element.
Use a paragraph tag below it.
Yeah, we could probably use a paragraph tag below it. We can either manually add the paragraph tags. I was about to type in NW3 for Modern Warfare 3 instead of W3 schools. We can come to W3 schools, and if we go to HTML, and we scroll down to HTML DOM, I believe. Where you at, buddy? Was it JavaScript DOM? Yeah, it was JavaScript DOM. My bad. JavaScript DOM. There's something that we can do. I'm looking for a specific method. I don't know. It's like create element, I believe is the name of it. Here we go. All right. I was looking for this. Adding and deleting elements. So I could potentially hard code a paragraph tag, or what I could do is continue to use my JavaScript, right? JavaScript can do this for me, and I can manipulate my DOM from my JavaScript file to make this dynamically. And this is ideally actually how you want to do it, right? You don't want for you to have to hard code an empty paragraph tag and then eventually fill it up. That's not very dynamic for a web page, right? You want to be able to, for example, if you had a website for a music streaming service and you want somebody to add their playlist or add a playlist or add songs to a playlist and then show you the new song added to their playlist, like you don't want to have predefined p tags or predefined list tags that you're going to fill up over time. No, you need to be able to dynamically create it with JavaScript, right? So here is another introduction to some helpful methods. This is how you do it with JavaScript. When you guys get into the immersive program, you'll learn React, and React has another way of doing it, but they're similar concepts, right? And I show you this so when you guys get to React, you're not lost in the sauce and you understand, oh, I know what this is doing and why it's doing it or why we are doing it, right? And that's going to be creating elements using our JavaScript. So we're going to create an element, and then let's see how this works. So in my JavaScript, before I manipulate instructions, this is not going to work, obviously, as we already determined, because it's going to be within the instructions tag. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new element. I'm going to make this element instructions element or new instruction element. It's equal to document dot create element, and then the element I'm going to create is going to be a p tag. I believe that's a syntax for this. Create element, yeah, and then you pass in the element in here. But I'm going to create a p tag. I'm almost certain it is within quotation marks. The last time I did this, right? This should create my element. After I got my new element, I need to format this element. I'm going to say new instruction element dot value is equal to document dot query selector. No, that's not what I want to do. I'm going to assign the value to this p tag the instructions from the data that's coming back. So this should be data strings index 0 string instructions, right? That should be what's assigned to this p tag as a value, right? And then the next step is what? What do you guys think we need to do? We have the element created.
Where does it go?
Yeah, where's it go? How do we add it to the HTML document? Well, there's a couple ways. And the way that we're going to do it is by using the append child. Right, we're gonna append a child. So you call the document.append child and you pass in the element you're trying to append. So what does that tell you? You probably have to figure out what element you're trying to append to. And then in that element, you want to invoke this method to append a child to it, right? So let's give that a try. Let's see how this works. I want to add it into that list. Not list, my bad. This H3 here, right? I probably want to append it to this H3 element. So I need to grab the element and then append a child to it. So I'm going to say document dot query selector, and this element is called drink instructions. And then I'm gonna say dot append child, and I'm gonna append it the new instruction element. And let's see how this works. I'm actually not sure how it's gonna look like right now. But we might have to do some debugging, and that's okay. This is part of learning. Let's give it a try. I'm gonna go back to that document. I'm gonna give it margarita, and I put get cocktail. And I got an error. Cannot read properties of no append child. There's something wrong with the child that I created. I wonder if I can console.log new instruction element. Give me a second. Let's see what this gives me. Yeah, it gives me a p tag for sure, right? So here I see line 15. When I console.log that element, I see that it is a p tag. So the tag was created successfully, but I think instead of dot value, I need to do inner HTML. Let's do it again. Margarita. It gave me another issue. I couldn't append the child.
Drink instructions. You're not calling the class. Have to have a dot in front of it, right?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I missed that. You're absolutely correct. Good catch. Good catch. Hey, there it is. Here is my element added into my instructions. If I open up my HTML document, I can look at the body. If I scroll down, inside of drink instructions, there is a p tag assigned to it as a child. That's actually not too good either, though. What's going on here?
It's also bold as a header.
It's also bold, right? What's probably happening here, let me show you in HTML. What's happening here from what I think is happening, it has instructions here, and then it has a p tag within the h3 element, which is why it's taking the formatting, right? So when I appended the child, it looks like it added like this, right? This is not too ideal either. So let's try a different approach, see if we can make this work.
Mine's not doing that. That's why I'm confused.
Let me see
Mine-
yours. Okay. Yours is looking good. All right. Go to your HTML. Let's look at your code.
All right. So here's the HTML. Got the 3 tags here. Here is what we're looking for.
Yeah, I see. I'm wondering why mine looks like the way that it is. It's a very, very good question. Oh,
I don't. I'm not good enough to know.
it's okay. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Well, oh, I think I know why. I think I know why. Stand by. What do you use for manipulating the text?
I used inner.html.
Okay, never mind. It's not what I thought it was. What if I use inner text? Uh, they're pretty similar. Let me see. No, it's not. It's not working. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'll figure it out. see what's going on, so I
I
don't
just
waste any more time. Uh huh.
s- oh no, I'm sorry. I had a phone call, so I
Oh,
was looking, I was kind of following along, but then my brain like was on the phone call. I don't know what's happening.
oh, that's okay. Yeah, we're just doing the cocktail problem, but yeah, I'll figure out why mine's looking still bold. I'm not quite sure exactly where the boldness is coming from. It's a little confusing, but just to break this down, essentially, we right here for everyone to know, we created a new element and appended it to instructions, right? So everything else pretty much stays the same. We manipulated the header for the name, the image, and then for the instructions, we created a brand new element using create element. Afterwards, we gave it some text by using the inner text method and assigned to it the instructions part. And then finally, we appended it to the instructions. Pretty cool. All right. Let's go ahead and continue with today's class. That concludes the cocktails.html. We already saw that the Moscow Mule thing is no longer relevant. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be Postman. Who's heard of Postman before?
Yeah, I used it before a long time ago.
I do not have Postman. I need to download it. But Postman is going to give you something like this. You guys are going to use it and you're going to need it for the immersive program. I'm not going to download it here because I don't use the computer for development. But it's going to look something fairly similar to this. Actually, you know, I'll download it. Whatever. Give me a second. Let me get the setup. You guys are going to need it for the immersive program. So you can download it now if you want to check it out. So you have it already. They're going to tell you to download it anyways once you get into the immersive program. So might as well just have it. But Postman is going to allow you to ping API endpoints without having to create a bunch of files and write out an API request. You can do it manually through Postman. Stand by. I'm trying to get this. Okay. I have it. Go ahead and share my screen again. All right. So I got Postman. It's a quick download, but your Postman should look something like this, right? You are able to do everything that we just did through Postman. I don't remember how I did this. API development. There we go. I'm gonna create a new one. All right, so this is how you're gonna use Postman. We use the cocktail DB. And the cocktail DB gave you a URL. Well, I'm gonna grab the URL. This is a pre-built API, so these will work. But when you guys are creating your backend and you're working with your application, what you're going to do is you're going to test your API that you guys are creating by using Postman, right? you are going to create your own endpoints. Now, what's going to make this so much easier is to have Postman, because you can ping those APIs directly without having to create a different file to access your backend. And when you see here, I added the endpoints, and then you're going to choose what type of request you're trying to make. The requests that we have been using are GET requests, right? And as the name applies, it grabs or gets information for you, right? We're going to talk about these other methods later in the course, but the one that you need to worry about right now is the GET request, right? I want to get something at this endpoint, and I press send, and on the bottom is going to be whatever comes back from that fetch request. And as you see here, this is the exact same thing that we got when making a fetch request in our JavaScript files. So what this does, it keeps you from having to open up a new project, opening up a new file, writing out the API request or formatting anything. You can just directly add the URL here and ping that API. You're going to get a class on authorization and different headers. But for the more complex APIs, like the ones that you guys are going to be using, you're going to require authorization, right? So you have to put like username and password, right? If they have a key, it has to be added in here, tokens, stuff like that. I know that might seem a little foreign right now. You're going to be able to add a body tag to your request. So in the event you want to update a field in your database or something, you can add the stuff here, right? You would essentially do something like this where you say username and you're going to sign it. Well, it has to be quotation marks, right? You essentially format your request here. JAWS 2019, whatever, right? And then let's say this endpoint was to update your username in your backend, right? You format the request that you're making with the information so you can simulate as if your application is pinging the API. So Postman is going to be very helpful with your API development. So you're going to need it. Might as well just have it already. You'll also get like the message. So you're going to work with like different messages. For those of you who've been to a website and you got like an HTTP 404 not found, if you get that kind of error message back from the API, it'll display the message here, the type of error you got. You can format this with different types of information you're getting back. So very helpful tool. So you can either download it now or just wait till later. It doesn't really matter. I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that this is a tool that we use for API development, or I guess backend development, right? That's Postman. All right. API requests. We talked about the old way of doing things, right? We use the fetch method. The new way that you're going to see more often is going to be creating a fetch request within a function, right? And you're going to see that it's going to share a lot of similarities to the old way, but they're both going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to create a function. Notice that you're going to have a keyword here called async, right? The fetch request that we did earlier already does that. The way that it implements it is by using the .then method, right? But async, essentially what it means is when it runs this method, it does not pause the loading of everything else in your application, right? If you did not have async and you were making a request that wasn't asynchronous, what would happen is it would have to run your JavaScript, and while it's trying to make this request, everything else on your application will be on hold, right? So they wouldn't be able to see anything on their screen until the fetch request finishes, right? Async keeps that from happening. It allows everything else to continue loading while your function is doing its job, right? So you're going to require the async method here, right? It's going to be a function, right? We're making this fetch request within a function. It doesn't have to be called get fetch, right? Just something relevant that allows you to know that it's supposed to be a fetch request or a get request to some API, right? Here we see the first line within this fetch request is they're creating a variable called choice, right? And what's actually being assigned to this variable? Well, it's going to be the value of some kind of input tag, right? Kind of very similar to how we got the value for a cocktail DB fetch request. You know, the text that we added within the input tag, that's what they're doing here. They're grabbing that value and they're saving it to a variable called choice. After that, they format their URL, just like we did on this last assignment, right? They add the URL path and then they concatenate the choice to the end of it, right? You could do string interpolation too, whichever one works for you, but essentially that's all they're doing here. They're creating the URL path endpoint so they can make the request. Once the URL is made, you then do the fetch request, as you see here. You see fetch, and they have the URL already here. But instead of using the .then method that you saw earlier, right? They're using await. So they pretty much do this all in one line. They create the variable of where the promise is going to come back to and be assigned into, right? Let data equals await fetch URL. So when this runs, when it gets to this line, it's going to try to make a variable called data. Well, what is going to be the actual value of this variable? Well, the value is going to be whatever comes back from this fetch method. This fetch method is going to ping the API. It's going to return a promise and save it into data. All await is doing is the exact same thing as .then. It's telling your code, like, hold up, it's working, it's doing this thing, let them cook, you know what I'm saying? And then eventually he's going to get the value and save it into the data variable. Once the data variable is saved, we then, once again, parse through it, just like we did earlier, using the .json method, also using the await keyword. And now the information is saved into a variable as well. Then we console log. This is the exact same thing as this, right? Just with much more updated keywords and methods that are now the standard, right? So both of these do the exact same thing, just a different way of structuring it, right? This is, for most people, this is a little bit more readable than this. Do you have any questions on the much newish API syntax? All right. Okay, I got a question, Nick? I hear a mic.
No, sir.
Okay, right on. All right. If I have no further questions, let's get to the last assignment for today, which is going to be Pokemon.html. Who here has never played Pokemon in their life?
Hell yeah.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. So for the most part, we've all seen Pokemon. Let's check out this assignment. We're going to go ahead and close up our cocktails. We no longer need it. And we are going to be working on the Pokemon. Pokemon.html. Open with live server. Open in browser. This is typically a much more fun assignment. Right, you already have some code. We have some HTML pre-established that we've seen on everything else. Right, the JavaScript, once again, it's pretty much the exact same thing that we just saw on their slides. It's already pre-formatted for you to show you how it works. Right. Let's go ahead and open up our inspect tool and go to console. Ooh, that's interesting. Oh, my bad. Is it running? Oh, let's go. Oh, we have to. It's on the button. My bad. We have the event listener on the button. Let's press the get Pokemon. And there we go. Here is the fetch request being made. So to break down the structure of this, we have our H1 element, which is the title for which Pokemon. We have the input tag and the button tag, just like we've had before, right? Both of these are pretty much empty, right? The input tag has nothing in it. The button tag, it does have a function, which we'll see in a bit, as you guys just saw earlier. And then we have the name tag, question mark. The image is hard-coded in here, right? Pokemon.jpg, where is this image at? It's here in your file directory, right? We saved the image here to kind of give you something already. But this isn't really dynamic, right? It's hard coding a default picture. And then we also have one more last tag, which is type question mark. So your assignment is to write the code for this app so that on the bottom, I'm sorry. So on the button click, the H2 name element changes to the Pokemon search. The default image is replaced with a picture of that same Pokemon, right? So I need to be able to come in here, type in Charizard, press get Pokemon, and get a Charizard image as well as the name and the type, right? Now, as a stretch goal, where's that? If you have time, add a checkbox next to the get Pokemon button that says shiny. If this shiny box is checked, it should return the shiny picture of that Pokemon, right? So we already conclude that everyone has played Pokemon before. We know that there is a normal version of the Pokemon, but there's also a very rare version of the shiny version of that Pokemon. They're typically a different color. So by default, our application should be able to take in a name and grab the Pokemon that it belongs to. But there should be a checkbox here that if it's checked, instead of grabbing the normal one, we return the shiny version. If it's unchecked, they just grab the normal version, right? Now let's look at the API for Pokemon. PokeAPI.code. You're gonna see this a lot. We use the Pokemon API in our curriculum a lot. But as you see here, this is the homepage for it. Right off the bat, it shows me how to work it. Here is the URL path. It's the default version is PokeAPI version 1 or version 2, followed by Pokemon and Ditto. Right. I see here this is the information that I'm getting from the Ditto search, and it's a lot, right? It's a little bit more nested than the Cocktail one, right? We have different key value pairs with different other data structures within them. As I parse through this here, I see a couple things. I see ability, cries. I see held items, the name. There's moves in here. This Ditto has a move, has one move, which is transform. I see types. You're gonna want to look for sprites. Under sprites, you're gonna find key value pairs for the back default picture, back shiny, or front default or front shiny. Also, some of these might have a female version, so if you want to grab the females too, you can. But you're gonna want to grab the front default, right? That is the front version default of that image. And then you also have the front shiny, right? So whenever you are setting the image for this, you need to be able to check, is this shiny checkbox checked or not? If it's not, then I'm going to return the key that's on front default. If it is checked, I'm going to return the key for front shiny, right? And then we can continue trying this. We can say Charizard, which is a fan favorite. And here's the Charizard one. Same thing here. Charizard has species, has sprites, it has types. Here's another one. Look at the types for Charizard. Charizard has fire and flying. Right, we're gonna have Pokemon. They're gonna have multiple types, so you need to be able to handle multiple values within your results. That's Charizard. My favorite one is Dragonites. Dragonites, held items, moves, sprites, type, dragon, flying. Right. Not all of these will have two types, but if they do, you need to be able to handle that as well. If you want more information on the API, you can go up to the very top, or not. I take that back. Not the top, right here. Check out the docs. You can go to docs, close out the ads, and you can see a little bit more about how this works. On the left side, you can see berries, evolutions, location, machines. You can see moves, the different types of moves Pokemon have. So yeah, do you have any questions on this assignment? Okay. If I have no further questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording now.